Quarter for orchestras and composers. I made this document today that really outlines how to use classical music for dummies. So it has, I put on the back, I made these tables for cycles 1, 2, and 3. We've got who the composer is, what the name of the song is, how long the playing time is for the piece, what page is about the composer, what page is the listening guide. So this will help you use this book. And I also on the front here have the URL address to where you can download the tracks that go with this song. So those are the songs that our Foundations Guide tell us to listen to. Classical Music for Dummies has those tracks available for free to download. So those are the ones that you need to download, those versions, to use with this book. So the listening guides, like you would literally listen to the song and use the listening guide, and it tells you at different timestamps to say different things or to point out different things. So that's how you would use the listening guide. And the about section, you would definitely not just sit there and read straight to the kids, because it's a lot of information and some of it is not appropriate for certain age groups. So you would definitely want to pre-read that and just choose a few things to share about the composer. But first, I'm going to talk about what tutors do during this time period, and then I'm going to talk about what the directors do, because this quarter, 2 of the weeks, the director or some other designated adult will lead that whole section and not the tutors. And then the other 4 weeks, the tutors are leading their class. So this paper kind of outlines what the tutors do for those 4 weeks. It has been suggested by other directors, and I've done this as well in the past, so I want to put it out there to you. The way that CC has it is that the first 4 weeks are with the tutors in their classrooms, and then the last 2 weeks is a director or another adult. I'm just going to say director, okay? But you can know that you can delegate this if you want to. But the last 2 weeks, the director does it. But it kind of makes more sense, and so a lot of directors are changing that to put what the Foundations Guide has for week 23. We're putting it at week 19, because then you can, because that is introducing the orchestra. If you can go ahead and introduce the orchestra before you start listening to the composers, then some of what the tutors talk about during their listening guide to like point out different things that are happening will make more sense to kids because they've been introduced to the orchestra. So I think it's a great idea to go ahead and do that week 19. So week 19 then becomes the director's responsibility. A lot of times it's done as a large group. That's what we do. Sometimes it's done immediately after opening. Sometimes we haven't done that because it just makes for a really long time to sit there. I've always brought people back like at the end of the day. From 11:30 to 12 is mine. I lead the whole community in this orchestra time. And then it would be the same kind of thing on week 24. So in the between weeks, the 4 weeks between, so I have written down right here basically what we're doing. So this is what would be week 20, and then this is what would be week 21 through 23. Remember, I have bumped week 23 from the Foundations Guide to week 19. So these week things are a little bit off from what the Foundations Guide says. But in week 20, they're introducing the different musical periods and the instrumental pieces by basically listening to each one. And for all 4 of these weeks, the focus is just listening. It's learning to be a good listener. And one thing that helps us listen well is to get dark and quiet and have eliminate distractions. So if you can get into a dark place, whether your room is dark, whether you can move to some place in the building that's dark, whether you get your kids little eye masks that they can wear, whether you just have them bare their heads in their hands, maybe they can bring a blanket from home and wrap their head in it. I mean, or just like put their head over it. I mean, there's different ways you can get creative about getting a dark space, but we just want it to be quiet and we just want to listen to these things. So that's week 20. That's going to take basically the whole time is kind of introducing these different pieces. And then weeks 20, 21, 22, 23, you're going to talk about a composer and then listen to their piece 3 times each. So a different composer each 3 weeks. So they've already been introduced to those. They've heard the pieces, but now you're going to actually talk about them. So you will talk about each composer. You'll name him. You'll share a little bit about him. But remember that this quarter is all about listening well. Not as much about the composer. Yes, we want them to remember the composer's name, but details of their life are less important for the kids to really remember. So we're really trying to hammer home their name and maybe just recognizing some of the music. So don't spend too long introducing the composers, but get right to the listening, especially because, as you'll see in some of my charts, throughout some of the, so in cycle 1, Mozart's piece is 11 minutes long. And ideally, we are listening to things 3 times. So obviously, that's not going to happen, right? Like, we might get 2.5 because we only have 30 minutes. So it's helpful to see these timestamps to help plan out your time, because for Handel and Bach, you might have a little bit more time to talk about the composer because their pieces are a little bit more than 4 minutes long. So anyway, so we're listening 3 times these 3 weeks. So the first time through is dark and quiet. Nobody's talking, just listening. Second time, dark and quiet, but the tutor is talking. The tutor is using the listening guide here, and they are using the timestamps, and they're not reading everything. Okay, the tutors need to have gone through this at home already and kind of decided which things they would like to highlight. They do not have to do the whole thing. They could, but they don't need to. They don't have to. So you might go through and highlight the things that you want to say. So it might, you might be listening for a minute, and then the listening guide says, hear the bassoon here as it swells and makes your emotions feel blah, blah, blah. So that's the kind of thing that you might be saying. So the students are quiet, it's dark. Usually my tutors have their phones or a flashlight so that they can read the book still while it's dark. So they're sharing just here and there, but still mostly listening. And then the third time through, the lights come on, people go back to their seats, you color, you draw. There's some great sheets on Facebook that you can find, or on CC Connected, where there's a picture of the composer and a little box, and you can draw like what it made you feel like. Did it make you happy, sad? Those are great to use. You can also just hand them a blank piece of paper and just tell them to draw anything. It could be something to do with the composition, or it could just be anything. Just get those hands busy. Little guys, maybe Play-Doh, anything to keep those hands busy and the mouths quiet while they listen for a third time. So that's those 4 weeks. The other 2 weeks are for the director to lead. And I would say over the years, you might do different things every year, because directors have lots of different great ideas. It's very normal to just be like, let's try that this year. And if you do the same thing a number of years, then you might be ready for a change. That's actually where I am. I've done the same thing, basically the same thing for the last 4 years, and I'm ready for a change. But I'm going to share with you what I've done in the past, because I don't actually know for sure what I'm doing this year. But I think it'll help you just to see what I did in past years in case you would like to do that. So when I'm introducing the orchestra, one thing I love to do is see if there are parents in the community or kids who play certain instruments from certain instrument families, because we're going to be introducing the instrument families, right? Percussion. So I made these signs, and I will probably find a way to use them again. Percussion, brass, strings, woodwinds. So you're introducing all 4 of these instrument families. So if you found a parent or a student who plays an instrument in each of these families, that would be a really great opportunity for you to bring in and involve the community and let the kids get an example of that. I have a few, kid ones that I can show. These pretty much are all percussion, just about. I think a harmonica would be like a woodwind. But I show what I can show, and then I can usually pull together a demo of each of the instrument families. So that's really fun and cool. And so that introduces the orchestra, but you're also introducing the time period, or like the period of the art that we're talking about this cycle. So cycle 1 is the Baroque period of the arts and the classical period of the arts. So I love to hang up the timeline cards. So I'll go like, maybe 1 or 2 before Council of Trent, and then Baroque period of the arts. And I'll actually hang these cards on the board, in order, going all the way to classical period of the arts. And again, maybe I'll go 1 past, and we'll sing that portion of the timeline song together. And I like doing that because I think it helps the kids understand or kind of put into context what was going on in the world during that time period of the arts. And sometimes it helps to explain why that period of the arts was the way that it was, just based on what was going on in the world at the time. So that's something you could do to talk about the period of the arts. If you have the famous artists cards, you can stick them, once you get the timeline put up on the board, you could stick the artist cards up on the timeline as well, like place them in the timeline when they lived. And that's another cool thing you can do that kind of just places a human being in the actual timeline. Okay, so that is introducing the time period, and it's introducing the orchestra. Another thing you're going to do is teach the orchestra song. So I printed it out because especially parents will really appreciate having this printed out. I typed it up. It's really easy to type up. It's in the Foundations Guide. So everybody gets one. I've got them as little cards. We pass them out. I've done it different ways, but I assign the entire community to one of these 5 parts, either violin, clarinet, trumpet, horn, or drums. And again, years ago, I laminated pieces of construction paper with the different parts, and that helps the kids understand which section they're sitting in. You can set up chairs to be really fancy and more like an orchestra, and you can even look up what the orchestra, how it was situated in the different time periods of the arts if you want to, but you don't have to do that. So anyway, you divide your community into those 5 sections. Make sure you have parents in each of the sections because sometimes the kids are really quiet. Okay, I'm still going. Yes, okay, sorry, I was getting a phone call. Anyway, so then you teach the orchestra song, and it's really helpful to have a baton. This is my baton. It's a chopstick. But it does really help. I am not musical. I like to sing, but just for fun. So it's not like I can't read music. I'm not good at music. It's okay. You can still do this and have a lot of fun with it. I actually really love leading these 2 weeks every year. So anyway, I won't go into that. So I use my little chopstick, and you just want to, move your hands so that you can give everyone a beat to try and keep it in time. That does help for sure. But you're basically teaching each part of the orchestra song, and then you try it all together. And that's going to take a good solid 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how many times you practice it. So everything I've mentioned so far would probably fill up your first week, but on your last week, week 24, you're going to do the orchestra song again. You won't have to teach each part again, but you might sing it through a few times, 2 or 3 times, see if you can get better and better every time. And then another thing I do on week 24, which is called the celebration week, one thing I've done is I've played the pieces that we've been listening to a lot, and then I have the kids guess who the composer is, or not guess, but you're hoping that they maybe know who it was. Last year, I actually made little cards that they raised up with the picture of the composer on it and their name. That was time intensive. I don't know if I will do that again. I might just have people raise their hand and tell me who they think it is. Just playing a little clip of a song to see if they know who it is. I think kids think it's fun to you might be trying to trick them or something like that. So it was fun. It was always a hit. The other thing that I've done that is really fun, here's some more instrument families sheets where I've got pictures of the different instruments, and I set up basically like a relay race. So I have all these, so these go on one end of the room with a parent. A parent sits down at one end of the room with one instrument family. So we've got 4 parents there, sitting there with their pictures of the different instruments. And then I've got these cards. I found these pictures on CC Connected many years ago, and I laminated them all, and it's just tons of pictures of different instruments. And I scatter them on the floor, and I get the kids in 2 lines or 4 lines, and I just have them run and pick up a card and go give it to the adult who's in the right instrument family. Because we've talked about, which instruments are in which families based on what different things about it. I'm totally blanking on that word, but the different features of the instrument families. So it's really fun. It's especially on week 24 when everybody's so excited, and it's a fun day anyway. It's loud. We've done it in the hall before because we have a really long hall. So we get on one end of the hall and we run down to the other. So it's really quite a blast. Other things I've done in the past are showing videos. The Remarkable Farkle McBride is a really awesome book about the orchestra, and the author, John Lithgow, has actually made a video, and you can watch it on YouTube, where he reads the book, but then there's added in some real pictures of orchestra and some extra little audio sound bites kind of as he's reading. And it's a good 7-minute long video, and I've shown that before during the celebration week or even during the intro week. I've also showed other videos of actual orchestras from YouTube, especially when I have classes coming, like when I have the whole community coming back together at the end of the day to do this time, I'll maybe have on a video while everybody's coming in, seeing the orchestra. Because for some kids, it might be their very first time seeing a real orchestra on, in person. It's a video, but still, it's cool. So those are just some different ideas that you can do. There really are so many ideas. So don't get overwhelmed. Try something this year and then tweak it next year. Keep tweaking it until you find something you like. And then when you get tired of it, come back and look for more ideas. So don't be afraid of this. Even if you're not a musical person, you can do a really good job with this, because if I can do it, you can do it too.